An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
All right, how's everybody doing tonight? I'm gonna see if I can put on some video clip here from Thomas Valiant, and let me know in the comments if you can hear me, first of all, and if I start to digitize and you can't hear me during the stream at any time, let me know as well. I'll try to reposition myself. So hopefully, I think we have 10 people in the chat already. If you can hear me, just give me a shout out and I'll see what I can do. Oh, look, LD is here. Great, Literature Devil's here. Just someone give me a shout out in the comments to let me know that you can hear me loud and clear. I hate to talk for another hour without anybody being able to hear me. So, great. Sound Engraver says, okay, audio works great. I want to thank Sound Engraver. She gave me a $2 super chat before we even began, and she's been doing that for a while. You should go check out her channel on YouTube, and especially if you want to know a little bit more about audio, let's put it that way. So I wanted to do this, great. I wanted to do this quick stream. I'll probably be here for about an hour, but what I'm going to do is, since everyone's doing second chance campaigns for their books, I thought I would start a second chance campaign for Thomas Valiant. I have somewhere between 200 and 250 books left of the first printing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those up on Indiegogo. Now, these books, if you bought any of the first edition Thomas Valiant from the first campaign, it says right in the back, in the little legalese at the back bottom corner of the, let's see, the inside of the back page, it says first edition, first printing. So there will be the first print leftovers, and I will be signing them. So that's going to be a second chance campaign for Thomas Valiant. I'm hopefully going to be putting it up tomorrow. I've been working on the page, which is fairly easy for me to do since I'm just cutting and pasting a lot of the stuff from the old page into the new one. So for anyone who has not gotten Thomas Valiant and they just want that book itself, or you want one of the first printing, well, you can have that chance. So the reason why I'm doing this is because, again, I had someone contact me and actually give me money for a number of books, about 250, that they were going to give away to charity. But I have not been able to contact this person again since. I've tried and I've tried. I had their email, called. I can't get a hold of them. So I figure I'll take those 250, put them up on the second chance. And if he ever gets back to me to take those books and put them into circulation via the charity that he wants to give them to, I'll just do another printing of them for the 250. So for now, I want to get rid of these in my storage area. So if anybody has any questions in the chat, just let me know. And I am going to be talking a little bit tonight about Thomas Valiant and a little bit about CROM the Destroyer. If anybody has any questions at all, just let me know. Again, I'm always, after that time I streamed probably about a year and a half ago now, where I spent an entire hour talking to myself because I didn't do something correctly. Just let me know in the comments every once in a while that you can hear me. Little John says, "What's up, RJ?" Not a lot, except for the fact that I'm going to be putting up a new Thomas Valiant campaign. Just a second chance campaign. I don't know if I'll keep it up for 30 days or 60 days, but I want to keep these campaigns rolling along so that, first of all, to go back and sell those extra Thomas Valiant books and the posters, of course, if anybody wants those. That will be the last time that you're going to get them in that format, again, with the first edition. I think that I might go over to uh, so great. Everybody can hear me? Great. So I think I might go over to Kickstarter as well and try a campaign there just with the books that I've already done, like Thomas Valiant, but not the first edition. And it might be actually a little bit more expensive if I do it over there. Or possibly other books, just to see if I can pull in a different audience from over there as well. So I want to keep campaigns going as much as possible, have an open campaign all the time. Right now, I have the Valiant Heroes up, but it's extremely slow. So I figured I would do this as well for Thomas Valiant first, and then, of course, the Valiant Heroes, which we're chugging along on the Valiant Heroes. If anybody wants any questions about either the first book, which is Thomas Valiant, second book, which is The Valiant Heroes, the third, which is CROM the Destroyer, and Renzo Rodriguez is chomping at the bit. I think he's going to probably start Thomas Valiant #2 within the next couple of weeks. So we're planning to start CROM the Destroyer, I think around the 4th of July. We'll probably put up the campaign for CROM the Destroyer. I have two artists working on the book right now. The first one is Jim O'Reilly, and if you've seen any of if you've seen the intro that I just played, that's mostly Jim's art. I do have a couple of other artists doing pinups as well. I have Mike Gustovich doing the inking. He's an old hand from Marvel and DC mostly, actually, but he did work on Conan the King, if I do remember correctly. I got an old artist from Ghost Rider doing some of the pinups, and I'm getting Nick Axe, who does most of my covers and did that beautiful Phantasm as well as disc pinup for Thomas Valiant. He's going to do chapter 2 for CROM the Destroyer. So we're going to try to get that going and make it go a little bit faster so that we can get that book out. I was hoping to do CROM the Destroyer before the Valiant Heroes, but it got slowed down. I was actually supposed to open up that campaign last July. But again, it's the whole problem with getting the art done, because I don't want to be putting a book out there for sale. It's going to take forever and a day to complete with the art. I want to have at the very least 1/3 of the book done before I open up any campaign at all. So that's what I'm doing with that art and with CROM the Destroyer. So let's see. I have a question. I got a random question. Hope you don't mind. Do you like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? If so, which one is your favorite? Well, let me put it this way. I was not young enough to appreciate the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle craze. And when it hit, it was the worst thing imaginable. It was everywhere, sticking in your face, and it was not the good kind, because I was in the comic store and you had about second or third editions of the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books, and you couldn't buy it. It was just too expensive. So all I had reference to was the idiotic stuff that was coming out into modern society, and it was just grating on your nerves. However, that being said, I do have some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle books from the last about 10 years. They're not too bad, but I really am not into the team at all, so I don't have a favorite. No, sorry. So yeah, if you were alive, Little John, if you were alive when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff was coming out and you weren't a kid, uh, it was just horrible. I mean, if you remember, before the first prequel for Star Wars came out, that was bad, but it was nowhere near as bad as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But anyway, so let's see. Nobody has any other questions. I'm not sure what Paul is talking about. He's talking about Venom, Deadpool, and Deathstroke. Um, but anyways, back to what I was talking about. The new campaign for Thomas Valiant, which you're looking at again. Some of the art in the background, which is the first edition again, which will be signed by me. This is the leftovers from the campaign, although I'll probably have to print some of the posters again, and you won't be getting that free posters that you got with the stretch goals from the first campaign. So if anybody wants to get the extra posters that came out with the first campaign, they will be available. You're going to have to order them just like any of the other posters as well. So, oh, we got more questions here. What's your favorite Robert E. Howard story? Mine is Tower of the Elephant. Blew my mind. I would probably, I talked about in my last video that I talked about Robert E. Howard. I would say right now it changes every once in a while because I do read them and listen to them over and over again. So it does change what my favorite is. But I say right now it's probably oh, what is it? The Scarlet Citadel, the one I talked about in my last video. That's honestly the second part of that story is horrific, and in a way that just puts you on the edge of your seat. So I would say that's probably my favorite for now. It might change in the future. So let's see if I'm falling behind on the questions. RJ, remind me, what characters from Myth is Conan based on? Well, it all depends. There's a lot that he's based on. There is Khan of the 100 Battles, which it's probably the main character that he's based on. Um, but again, I don't read a whole lot of stuff from Robert E. Howard that's not story, so don't take my word for that. It might be someone else. I know there are plenty of different Khans in the Celtic myth. Anyways, there's Khan the Bald, there's Conor Mór, and Khan of the 100 Battles. There's a whole bunch of Khans. It's a very a regular name for many of the heroes throughout its history. For my character that I'm basing for CROM the Destroyer, I'm actually basing it on Conor Mór, as well as with a little bit of mixture of Lua the Longhand and also a little bit of Oishin, son of Fan. I don't know how you say that name exactly. Some say Oishin or Oisin. And also, who else is thrown in there? There's someone else thrown in there as well. But anyway, there's a bunch of those characters that I'm basing my character upon, which I believe is what Robert E. Howard drew his off of, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to copy Conan specifically, especially because, well, depends on where you are in the world, what a public domain actually works. But I'm going to draw on those characters that he drew on to make a very similar character and use the ones that are in the public domain. Of course, they've been in the public domain since, forever and a day because they're myths from the 400s. So those are my inspiration and a little bit his, if I'm remembering correctly, but that's if I remember correctly. Let's see. Let's see if I have any other questions. Literature Devil is here. Tower of the Elephant is my favorite too. I'll have to go back and go through that. I'm going through them one at a time as I'm doing stuff for CROM the Destroyer. So who knows? Scarlet Citadel maybe knocked off its high perch just because it's been so long since I've done anything to read or listen to any of those stories. I had there was a pile of books in the corner of my room for so long until I got to them, and even that was a long time ago. Let's see if I go scroll down a little bit. What do you think about Robert E. Howard as a person? I really don't know. Again, I don't know a lot about Robert E. Howard as a person. What I do know about him, he, I don't know. I mean, he seems like he was a pleasant person, but at the same time, he doesn't seem like he was a stable person. So I really don't know. I couldn't say. Again, I don't know that much about his life. Let's see. Moving down. Literature Devils talking to Sound Engraver. Okay. Um, Paul says it'd be cool to have a proper redemption arc where a bad guy really becomes a good guy. Yeah, I agree, but that's what my book right now for the Valiant Heroes. Basically, there's three different stories because I'm publishing them as floppies as well as together in the one graphic novel with another backup story that will only be available in the graphic novel. And one of them, they're all tied together by what's going on in the world around them, which basically got sparked by the events of Thomas Valiant, although you don't necessarily need to read Thomas Valiant to get that. But the middle story is the redemption of Kit Fox, because again, this is the Batman slash Wolverine character that we basically just made up, me and Renzo, for the first book of Thomas Valiant, and I thought it was going to be a throwaway character, just a throwaway bad guy. But again, he's not too much of a bad guy. He's a bit of an ass. We'll just put it that way. But he's not the typical, kill people on the street bad guy. He doesn't care about a lot of people, but at the same time, he's going to be redeemed because Renzo loved this character. He loved it so much, even when he was doing the art for Thomas Valiant. He said, "Can we please keep this character and do a redemption arc for this character so that we can make him into a proper hero?" Because Renzo loves, well, I wouldn't say Batman. It's more he loves Robin and Batman because of Robin. I think he told me that the first comics he can ever remember getting was the Chuck Dixon run on Robin. And he just loves that character. And so he loved making Kid Fox and the Jays, which is basically our version of the Robins, which again plays into the mimicking of the two worlds of Marvel and DC, which you have in Thomas Valiant. Let's see. I'm probably falling behind here. See if I can find any more questions. Um, John says, have you read the Book of Virtues, a treasury of good moral stories, edited by William J. Bennett? I have not, although that's something I should look up. Um, I take it I mostly read if I have the time to read, which I don't have a lot of, especially the fact that I'm starting to create more and more now. I have like 5 stories on the go. I just finished a chapter on CROM the Destroyer that I sent out to one of my artists, and then I'm moving back to the Thomas Valiant #2, so Renzo can start the art on that in the next week or two. I'm also working on another character which will premiere in the Valiant Heroes, which is Artemis. Um, and she has a story that I wish I had time to write right now. I don't. I wrote about half of it. I want to get back to that. And there's also another story about basically Egyptian myth that I want to sort of blend in there as well, which would be a period piece in probably 1920s. Again, I have a good outline for that I want to get at, but I don't have time to read a whole lot. That's why I'm listening to the Robert E. Howard stuff, because I'm doing it as I work. Sometimes on my normal everyday work that I do, besides on the computer, I have some time to listen, but that's about it. I wish I had more time to read. The little bit of time that I have to read is usually reserved for philosophy or theology, one or the other. Let's see. I'm going to go back up to see if I missed anything. I think I did. Paul says, Conan, be a braggart. Be a what? Be bagging ladies left and right. Uh, that's the one thing about Conan that I think most people miss about the fact that you call him a barbarian and he is this uncouth guy, but he always makes sure that the women are either saved or out of harm's way. All of these things, even in what's the name of the I think it's the God in the Bowl. In that story, there's a woman um, who basically I think is a prostitute. I'm not entirely sure, but she betrays him. and so that he gets arrested. I think it's the God in the Bowl. Is it? It might be. Oh no, I think it might be a different story. I'm not sure which one it is off the top of my head. But anyways, um, when he escapes, he goes out and he finds her, and he doesn't kill her. He takes her and dumps her in a pile of, well, basically an open latrine. Eh, that was her punishment. So Conan does have a streak of nobility in him, that's for sure. Certainly when it comes to women. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. Um, let's see. Everybody's talking about Conan. Great. No problem with that. Are you a fan of Lovecraft? Not entirely. No, not really. I don't quite understand um, what cosmic horror is about. I really don't. It's basically some kind of existential dread. I don't have existential dread, so it doesn't really make any sense to me. Besides the fact that um, he basically built his world off of what if God was evil or indifferent, one or the other. But that question was answered, I think, probably around the 1200s by medieval thinkers that basically said that, okay, if God was evil, let's take a logical exercise and figure out what would happen there. And they said, well, it would be nothing different than what our existence is right now. It's just that good would be evil and evil would be good, but we wouldn't know the difference because we'd be used to evil being good. It would be our good. So the whole idea of Lovecraft's world, his universe, doesn't make any sense to me, besides the fact that I don't have existential dread. So the horror doesn't really appeal to me in any way. I don't get it. Yeah. I know that Howard and Lovecraft actually exchanged letters, and there's copies of them. I don't know if they're available on the internet, but I do know that the person who is in possession of them has described them at least. So yeah, they did know each other and they did correspond with each other. And basically, I think if I'm correct, again, remembering, Conan did use some of the ideas from Lovecraft and his basically his monsters to give Conan some new monsters. But at the same time, and I know there's at the very least one Conan video game, which basically takes its lore from Conan exists in the same world as Lovecraft does, which I don't, for me, that doesn't make any sense. To me, that's not my headcanon for the character or Conan universe. So I know it exists, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of impact on me. Let's see, scrolling down. Is the shadow in public domain yet? I don't think it is. I think it will be in public domain in about a year, maybe two. Again, if I remember correctly, it will probably, it's not too long until it gets into public domain. Maybe I'm not entirely sure about how long it is actually. I was thinking 2 years, but maybe I'm incorrect on that. I do know that it will be in the public domain before Superman. So when Superman, probably not entirely sure about that. Is it 8 to 10 years? But still, not yet. So let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see if I can find any more questions. Um, Scrolling down. Veil of the Lost Women is wild. Okay, people talking about Conan. Great. Let's see. Oh, Sound Engraver says, thank you for your recent videos on science fiction and the ideologies tearing down science fiction. I'm returning to the classics with the likes of Asimov and Poe. Poe. I'm not even sure who that is. Honestly, I'm not. I'm very a nerd when it comes to a lot of science fiction and fantasy. I concentrate on myth and things that are connected to myth. So you know, I read Wheel of Time when it first came out. Tolkien, of course, all those kinds of fantasy, more than science fiction. My science fiction all came from, Star Trek or the comics that I was reading. So, although I did read Star Trek novels, stuff like that. Let's see, RJ, are you familiar with the stories of the Duo de Donna? Yes, I am. Basically, there's a giant tome. I think it's Lady Gregory. It's, at least 1,000 pages or more, which is Irish mythology. That's the I think the actual name of the book is Lady Gregory's Irish Mythology, which is I think it's a compilation of all of the books that she wrote concerning Irish mythology, and it starts with basically the Tuatha De Danann. Well, actually, it starts with the Shay, and moves into the people of the goddess Donna, and then into the Gaels, and it goes through the entire thing. Although, again, Celtic myth is so far removed from the way that we know of stories in the Greek way that our storytelling is done now. It's basically very short stories. All of them are sometimes a paragraph, sometimes 3 or 4 pages at the most, maybe about 12 pages. But yeah, it goes through the entire thing. And I've read that tome probably a half a dozen times by now. So yeah, I used to have an old channel where I actually read some of them using my faux Irish accent. But anyways, so yeah, very well versed in Irish mythology. Let's see, scrolling down, and let's see. Ooh, Sound Engravers talking about SG1. Let's see. Professor Geek is getting me into sci-fi television shows. I've only read sci-fi. I've not watched. Yeah, Stargate is one of those shows which I don't know about because I didn't watch it when it first came out. Um, but when Atlantis came out, I started watching Atlantis, and then I went back and watched all of SG1 because I'm that kind of person who I watch the movie and then I watch the television show, and it's like, this is just cringe compared to the movie with the special effects and everything like that. And they do play with the mythology for the universe and all that kind of stuff. Funny enough, if you listen to my interview with Don Chin, Don was the first person to write a Stargate anything outside of the movie. I think the first Stargate comic book, he wrote that. Don is a great comic connection. He's worked on so many things in the 80s. He's the one who what is it, the black belt hamster, what, I can't even remember, radioactive black belt hamsters. He created that and all those kind of things. And he wrote the Stargate comic book, the very first one. He wrote a story for me. It's probably about a year ago, which is going into Thomas Valiant #2, because he does Beard Zerker and things like that on Indiegogo now. X Farce, he does sort of comedic takes on comics. So he wrote a story for me under my basically direction. But anyways, back to Stargate. I kind of loved those shows for a while until it got to, I can't remember which one it was, because again, watch Atlantis, I really liked it. Went back and watched SG1, really liked it. Then I went forward and started, I think it was Stargate Universe that really ticked me off, and it got canceled right away anyways. So I guess there's nothing wrong with that. Uh, Everybody, a bad show is going to get canceled, and I thought it was a bad show. But there was what the heck was the one in between that? There was a third show where, anyways, basically they were trapped in the other side of the universe. That one was good too, and I can't remember for the life of me what it was. So yeah, really good sci-fi there. I'm not entirely sure on the we'll call it epistemology of how that world works, but yeah, interesting science fiction. Okay, I'm probably getting way backed up on these comments. Let's see, people talking about Farscape. I have never watched Farscape. Well, I've watched it, but not, sat down and actually watched episode after episode. Let's see. Oh, darn it. Scrolling down. Sorry. So Paul says, just ordered Kit Fox. Yes, a redemption of Kit Fox. We got basically the Thomas Valiant floppies and the graphic novel, which they're the same material except for the backup story. It's centered around monsters. So we're centered around that because again, the world sort of got knocked off kilter a little bit with some of the small things that happened in Thomas Valiant #1, which they, again, starts to lead to, if you watch the trailer for that, which is on the Valiant Heroes Indiegogo page, you'll see that there's a lot of strange things happening in the corners of the world, and this is happening because of the events in Thomas Valiant #1. Again, which is part of the reason why, again, a lot of people keep on asking me, they want Thomas Valiant. You can get Thomas Valiant #1 with the Valiant Heroes if you don't have that. But as I'm said, one of the reasons why I'm doing this live stream is I'm beginning a Thomas Valiant #1 first edition signed second chance campaign, so that people can get that first edition of the book if they want it. Again, signed by me, not by Renzo, by me, because Renzo's half a continent away from me. So getting them signed by both of us is just a bit too much. Although I am looking through some of the stuff that Renzo gave me. I'm looking at it right now, actually. He did send me some more pages and a bunch of sketches that he did of other characters. And he just gave them to me because he said, "Here, take these. I don't want them," because he just has so much in his studio to begin with. So I might put those up on that campaign as well, in case you want some Renzo Rodriguez stuff. So I'll have to figure that out. I think I'm going to go live with that campaign tomorrow, so that it's live for a Friday, so that everybody gets paid on Friday. You want to get one of those books. Hopefully, we'll start it on a Friday. Again, that's my intention. Let's see. Scrolling down, talking about Farscape. Did I miss something? Oh, I just wanted to thank Paul. That's what it was. Thank you very much, Paul, for purchasing Kid Fox. Again, Renzo loves this character. He puts his heart and soul into the art for this character because he loves it so much. And again, the whole point of Kid Fox, again, I wasn't going to use it as a main character, but Renzo wanted this character revived. So we're going to make the character, and I have made the character, an old school Batman type character, basically the detective, which you got in the late 70s, early 80s. Batman was a detective. He's not anymore. He's super preparedness man. He's prepared for any eventuality. I don't like that in the character. I want him to be a detective, and that's not the character anymore. So I want to bring the character, or a character like that, back to being a great detective. So that's what we're basing the entire thing around. So it's going to be mystery, and again, monsters and mystery, especially for the Kit Fox. So scrolling down, people talking about Lovecraft. Let's see. Would be understandable why people would feel that way about God during the medieval age. Yeah, I suppose. Let's see. Am I familiar with the works of Fritz Lieber? No, or Clark Smith. And if so, what are your thoughts on them? No, I'm again. Um, if you're talking about, I'm not sure. You're talking about philosophy, or are you talking about science fiction? Because I think you're talking about philosophy. If you want some virtue, philosophy, who the heck was it? Oh, there's a couple of people that I usually go back to, like Germans. Surprisingly enough, at least one of them, Yusuf Pieper. He lived through the Second World War, and basically was trapped there as a university professor and trying to tell all of his students that this is wrong, but of course having to shut up at some point. But he couldn't. I think he lived through the entire Second World War in Germany. But anyways, yeah, he had something to say about virtue after that, to say the least, during that time, actually. John says Don Chin is great. I completely agree. If you can ever get your hands on on Don's um, old book called Enchanter, I suggest you do so. That is amazing stuff. That's amazing fantasy. I didn't even realize that Don had done it. I was working with Don, having him write a story for me. We were talking back and forth about artists and all these kinds of things, and it never even clicked into me that Don had written Enchanter until I started to interview him, and I did a little bit of research into all the stuff he did, which is a great book from, I think, 1984. Let's see. Uh, scrolling down, no spoilers. On SG1, I take it out. Gone are the days when bad shows get canceled. Yeah, unfortunately. Uh, Dominic says, "Good evening, RJ. Ever since you released Thomas Valiant, have you read or listened to the critiques people had on your books?" Yes, indeed. There's not a whole lot out there. A lot were glowing praise, and I appreciate the glowing praise. There was one fellow who really hated my book, and I listened to his video, and I took what I could from that. But again, um, I understand why some people would hate it, but it's because of some of the things which I would find natural. He hated it because I didn't give any backstory to the people's powers. But I'm thinking to myself, the reason why I wanted to write the book, why I did, was not everybody's going to come into X-Men #1 at #1. You come into X-Men in the middle of the run, you come into it all new, all different X-Men. You don't know the origin of their powers. You don't know what's going on. And I want it to be, jump right in. Let's start with the action. And again, I'm giving you the origin of the heroism, not of the powers, because I don't think power is as important as most people make it. The heroism is the important part of the superhero. It's more important than the super part. So yeah, I listened to his criticism, and again, some of my panel choices, he said really drove him nuts. But he was the only guy who really ripped into the entire thing. And again, I listened to his video, took what I could from it. Although it's not going to make, I'm not going to just change everything for one person. If the majority of people say stop doing something, I'm going to stop doing it. But the majority of people had told me that they had a great read with my book, and I think one of the most I would say not influential, but the greatest one of the greatest comments that I got about Thomas Valiant was someone saying, you know, I'm what was it? She said, I'm about 20 years old and I listened to your videos and I never really understood what you were talking about when you talked about old comics. But now I've read Thomas Valiant. I understand now what the difference is between a good story in an old comic and what they do today. And I think that was the biggest compliment I got on Thomas Valiant. So let's see, scrolling down. Talking about Don. Don is a great guy. Can't say enough about Don. Again, he did write a story for me. We have it prepared. I think Mike Gustovich is probably going to be doing the art on that. Again, old hand for Marvel and DC. Um, it's a, uh, it's a basically a Thomas Valiant story from before Thomas Valiant #1, because Thomas Valiant was at one point a member of the Legion of Justice, which is who are basically the bad guys in Thomas Valiant #1. He was a part of that team, so we get to see him prior to all of this. And again, Don is a good parody writer and a good comedy writer. I wanted to do it in the vein of not quite the campy 70s Batman or the 60s Batman that was campy, but some of the strange choices they made in the 70s ones that were just would make you burst out laughing. When you write, I certainly, when I read them when I was a kid, I really didn't enjoy those old Batman because they seemed ridiculous to me. But when I read them today, honestly, I just guffaw at some of the things, some of the choices that they made. So we wanted to do a story like that. And that's what Don and I did for uh, a a Thomas Valiant story, basically set. I think it's set in the 1980s, so you get a little bit of throwback in a lot of things there. So let's see. Elijah has a question. Let's see. I've been doing research on the inspiration of the Greek gods. I find that Anatolian culture seemed to have inspired a lot of Greek myth. Is that accurate? Uh, it's really hard to say where Greek myth came from. It's probably, see, the thing about Greeks, they're very much like the English, in the fact that we as English people, we borrow from everywhere. We steal from everything and we just make it a part of our own culture. The English language is so complex and hard to learn because it's just a mishmash of so many other different languages. And English culture does that all the time. So does the Greek. The ancient Greeks did that all the time. They borrowed from everyone, they stole from everyone. If someone had a good idea, because that's basically what the Athenians did all the time. There's an old Greek phrase where you meet someone. It's my Greek is awful, but it's I think it's tai neutron, which is what's new. So that's a common Greek greeting. What's new? Because they're always concerned with the new thing, um, because they wanted to learn new things and basically put their society on top by borrowing, again, ideas of merit, which is basically they would steal from anyone if it had a what if it was a good idea that gave you good results. They would take it, they would adopt it, they would make it their own. Same thing with the gods. A lot of the gods came out of different cultures all around them. um Again, there were like Bacchus and things like that. They were introduced very late into the pantheon, and they were, when the Greeks were taking over other sections of their part of the globe. So basically, they were colonizing, with their outposts, and some of their religions from the native peoples were being put into their pantheon, things like that. So again, it's hard to say where the Greek gods come from particularly, although there is evidence that people like Athena and Heracles, they were actual people. There is some evidence for that, not a whole lot, but again, where these people lived when they were alive, that's another question entirely. So yeah, that's a hard question to get to the heart of. Let's see. I jumped again in my feed. I'm going to have to go down. One second. Let me catch up with these questions. Are you a fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs? Yeah, but at the same time, it's not my favorite character. I love his storytelling. How's that? I'm I have not. I have the big tome of. It's not the complete works of Tarzan. Obviously not. There's just too many to put in one book. But I have a large book in there that I was slowly going through. The thing about Tarzan is I'm an extremely visual person, and again, I find it's really weird. I was talking about this on my video about the panels, which I did about a week ago, which I think is the one I put out last Thursday, and how you did visual storytelling. And again, I grew up reading comics. Like, I was devouring comics. Comics were everywhere when I was a kid. I had an uncle that had, I think it was an uncle, I really don't know. My older brothers were given comics from somewhere, and we had comics all over the place when we were kids. And again, you could buy them at your corner store, and they were, I don't know what they were when I was a kid. Not 25 cents. It's a little more than 25 cents, but maybe 50. But anyways, I was always just scrounging through, cushions and dryer lint and everything else to find change to go buy comics because they were that cheap. Um, but that's why I grew up being a visual person and very visual reader. So when I actually read something, even something that's strictly print, like the Tarzan stories, all I do is visualize a scene. That's why I think I'm good at writing comics. I think I'm good at writing comics. Hopefully I am. But I visualize the scene every time. It's always a visual for me. And so those books, I just find it very hard to grasp onto the visuals for that. And it's not because of a limitation in the writing. It's my own limitation, which again probably comes from Conan comics, because I'm rereading a lot of the Marvel Conan right now, the ones I have, anyways. I'm going to get more if I can get to a proper comic shop, which I don't have around here. But the thing is that I find it much more visually appealing to read the stories that are set in a desert or in some kind of very sparse rocky area. When they get into the stories that are set in the jungle, it drives me visually, it drives me insane. I don't know why. Because there's just too much going on. It's too complex in the background. You can't see the foreground well enough, not as compared to the other books. And again, when I read something like Tarzan, again, that's, and I'm visualizing the entire thing, uh, things get lost in my visual frame of reference. Again, that's just me. So that's a long old spiel, but yeah, that's my problem with Tarzan. Not so much with Tarzan itself, more with my own way of understanding stories. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, based on your scholarship, do you think that any of these modern day stories will be remembered like the classics are? Nope, not a chance. Not a chance. We're basically living through the campy 60s again, except it's not campy anymore. It's the regressive 2010s and sorry, 2010s and 2020s. It's going to be completely forgotten. I think it was Chuck Dixon who said that the first time. But yeah, we're living through again that era of stories. It's not just for comics anymore. And again, I wouldn't say it was just for comics for the campiness of the 60s either, because you had, the Batman shows and all those kinds of things. But yeah, I can't see much of anything coming out of entertainment, what we have right now, and there's certainly nothing going to be built upon it because all they're doing is rehashing old stories. There's nothing new here, so why would you go back to something that's a bad interpretation of what was good, which is stuff from the 90s and the 80s? It's one of the things I find so disturbing that, and I'm sorry if you're someone who's 20 years old or so, but um, yeah, gotta start building your own culture. I mean, let's hope that a lot of young people start actually putting some stories out there that get into a mainstream, that get into a place where they can have some ability to continue on with storytelling, because there is no culture here. Within the last 15 years, there's nothing. It's a barren wasteland because it's just retelling of old stories, that are from when I was a kid. That's kind of sad and pathetic. It is. So I don't see any of this actually coming to anything. I don't know. Perhaps there's one or two stories that that might actually make it through. Possibly there might be, stories that are going to be from video games, which still have some kind of merit, or from other places in the world, but not from mainstream mainstream entertainment. No. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Dominic says, do you have plans on showing more background information on Thomas Valiant before and after he left the League of Justice? Looking forward to backing the project and owning a first volume. So, yeah, I'm going to get into the background information of the world. Um, so basically, if I get to Thomas Valiant number 5, if people continue on with wanting to have Thomas Valiant, I think it's probably I have so many stories mapped out and already sketched out that it's around issue number 5 or 7, if I get to there, that will basically flush out a lot of what the world is, and going back to that old information about, where people's powers come from, or what, at the very least, the limitations of people's powers are, because there's a strict limitation. People were telling me my characters looked too overpowered, and I'm thinking to myself, you just wait, because they have limitations, and it's basically based upon the world. But yeah, what I'm going to do is, hopefully, what I'm going to have is a Thomas Valiant and then a Valiant Heroes, and I'm going to have at the very least one backup story in every book from now on, which is going to be as if it was a complete floppy, so 20 to 26 pages basically. And those are stories that are going to explain the world and the backstory. Again, Don Chin wrote basically. Thomas Valiant used to be called Putty Man when he was in the Legion of Justice. It's a spoof off of Plastic Man, basically, with a couple of other things thrown in. I think what else I threw in was a gelatinous cube. But anyways, so yeah, he wrote something for that And I'm going to, if you notice on my books, if you have any of them, or if you're looking at the cover from any of the things I show online, is that on the cover, I give you a timeline. I don't give you when the thing was published. I give you a timeline when the thing occurred in the universe. So you can situate yourself according to those timelines. And if you buy them all, you can say this one comes before that, etc., etc. And again, the Thomas Valiant Putty Man story that Don Chin wrote, that's going to be based in the 1980s. So again, the cover for that floppy, which will be available probably with Thomas Valiant #2, um, um, and as well as a backup story in Thomas Valiant #2, will say the timeline for that. I have another story for Pulse, which is a 1980s story because he's really old, actually, as a character. Who Nick Axe wants to do that one with me, and I have that written as well when he ever gets the time to do that, and we'll put that in as a backup story. So yeah, I got a lot of plans to flesh out the world and the backup stories of these people. Yes, I wanted to get straight into the action so that people could just get to know the characters through the action. I think that's the most important thing. And we'll go back and fill in the blanks with more action because I'm all about action. But we'll do that with the extras, with the backup stories, with the floppies that are going to be available as part of or with all of the campaigns that I'm going to be doing. So that's my plan for those. And like I said, I got a dozen stories written already with these characters. So scrolling down. Uh, not sure that one was for me. What are your thoughts about philosophers like Kant, Rand, and Nietzsche? Don't like Kant very much. Nietzsche is a problem with modern society, and Rand is not what most people make her out to be. Most people think, listen to the basis of her philosophy and think objectivism. That's what RJ's always going on about because I say you have to be objective, but her brand of her definition of being objective is not objective thought as it is defined according to logic. She was quite the opposite of objective. If you look at her actual life, because I look at things according to political philosophy, that's what I'm trained in. So you look at the person's life and you see if it matches up with what they're actually saying in their philosophy. And if it doesn't, you gotta have to pull on some strings to figure out, well, okay, is the philosophy mimicking what they want to be, what they're trying to be, what they can't be, what they are? And if it is one of those things, is it just wish fulfillment? Stuff like that. So you got to look at that. And the one story that really sticks out in my mind about Ayn Rand is that she and one of her professors, when she was in university, I think she was one of the students. So her and one of her professors, um, they were in a relationship. Basically, the professor was married, and Ayn Rand was married at that time as well. So basically, they were having an affair, and they sat their respective spouses down, all four of them sitting around a table, and the professor and her said, listen, we know that you're married to us, but we're doing this for ourselves. So you have to be objective about it and allow us to do this because this is what we should do. Because again, developing her own philosophy there at that time, and already written some of what she had talked about in philosophy. So she's telling her husband and the wife of the man she's sleeping with that you have to accept this. You have to be objective about it and you have to let it go because we're doing what we want to do. But the problem is that several years later, that professor dumped Ayn Rand and basically for a younger, prettier model of one of his students. And just, she threatened to not only destroy him, but I think threatened his life as well. She said that, and he came to her and he said, listen, you got to be objective about it. This is for me. And going on to her, telling her through her own philosophy, this is what we're doing. So you have to be okay with it, which is the exact same thing she did to her husband and the wife of the man she was sleeping with. And yeah, then she started threatening his life. She tried to destroy him in every way. So she couldn't live out her own philosophy. Neither could Nietzsche. So I'm really skeptical of people who can't live out their own philosophy. If you can't, then that's a problem. Nietzsche wasn't even close to being able to live out his own philosophy. His basic tenet was have every man should be at war with every other man at every moment, and he couldn't even stand the sight of blood. He tried to be a soldier, and they wouldn't. He was basically 4F. They wouldn't allow him to become a soldier. He was too weak. And so he said, okay, let me be a stretcher bearer. That way, at the very least, I'll be out in the action and be a part of war. And they let him be a stretcher bearer, and he couldn't take it even for a short time. He couldn't, because he couldn't even stand the sight of blood. So again, these are people that can't live out their own philosophy. And if they're the person who created this philosophy and they know it best because they created the darn thing and they can't live up to it themselves, then there's something wrong there. So as far as I want to go with that. But for Kant, I think he has some strains of medieval, we'll say, uh, he wants to be logical, but he's not being logical in the way that medieval logic or ancient logic actually plays out. I think he is one of the progenitors of basically what is game theory. So, everybody uses Kant, and you go back to Kant, and you have to, because he's so influential and a bedrock of a lot of the ways that our society thinks right now. But at the same time, there is a lot of problems with his philosophy, in so much as there again, one of the things you learn, this is almost like first year political philosophy. One of the things you learn is that up to a certain point, you have the ancients and then you have the medievals, and they're actually being honest. And they thought what they were putting down was true every turn. And they weren't trying to deceive anyone at all. But as soon as you get into the moderns, you got to read with a skeptical eye, because you got to look at them out of the corner of your eye and say, and what are you trying to deceive me about now? And I think Kant's in that category as well. Anyways, uh, I take too long to answer questions, but hopefully I did answer your question. Let's see. Scrolling down. Also, I found Homer and Hesiod to have lineages that go back to Troy, which is said to be in, yes, in Italia. Well, actually, I don't know. Some people, as far as I'm concerned, when I was in university, basically they said that they had discovered where Troy is. They found the ruins for Troy, and it's basically based upon reading Homer and just going back to it. Today they say, that's not really true. I don't know who to believe at this point. It depends on, again, if you they might have actual archaeological evidence to back this up. I haven't looked that deeply into it, or it just may be the fact that, again, as so much of academia is right now, might be corrupted, and so we don't know whether or not they're just trying to destroy the foundations of Western civilization by saying it's not Troy. But again, you got to remember that Homer is what, I think like 400 years of verbal storytelling, because there was nothing written down about his story. So a lot of things play into it. Again, I don't know. The when you read Homer and you study Homer, you see, as I talked about, I think it was again in a video I did last week or 2 weeks ago, the turn of phrase that Homer uses, which is used like the wine dark sea or the rosy fingered dawn, all of these kinds of things, as a memory trick in order to memorize an entire epic poem. So it says to me that his ideas did come down fairly strictly through the people who were repeating it over and over again. But again, you can't rule out the fact that other influences are coming in, especially about what's going on within Greek culture at the time. So yeah. Scrolling down to scrolling down to new comments. Let's see. Sound engraver. Nope, that's not me. Someone's talking to SG. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. I appreciate the concept you're producing, incorporating history and philosophy into your talks on sequential art and pop culture. However, you also keep an open mind and a willingness to have it changed. Well, yeah, if I didn't have a willingness to have my mind changed, I'd be a progressive, one of these quote unquote progressive people. It I know that it takes a long time for me to change my mind, but yeah, I do change it. That was one of the things that I found really hard when I wrote my manuscript for my novel. I was working with professional editors, and my editor would come back to me and say, "Listen, you got to cut this part out, or you got to change this completely, or you can't do this, that, and the other thing." And I would my I don't know, I would get very very defensive and say, "No, I'm not changing it. No, I'm leaving it this way." But then I would leave it and I would think about it and I'd mull it over for probably about 3 to 5 days, and I would go, "Yeah, they're right. Yeah, I got to change this. They're right." So yeah, if you're going to be a good writer in any way, you got to have the ability to change your mind and have someone tell you that you're wrong. And even though it might sting, and even though it might take a little bit of time for you to recognize that, you got to recognize it at some point. So yeah, keeping an open mind um, is part of being a good writer. Let's see more questions. Hey RJ, I was wondering this. Let's see. Say 1 second. Was wondering, the progressives that deconstruct Superman, do you think they will have a breaking point or they will continue? Oh no, I definitely think they're going to continue. Yeah, there. Here's the thing about Superman. And again, it's going to happen to Batman pretty soon, although he might get spared a little bit more because he's the driving force behind DC Comics right now. If you took Batman and destroyed him like they've done to Superman, the entire comic line would probably fail. But the thing is that with Superman, because he's going into the public domain in the not too distant future, yeah, it's now the time to destroy him, because of the fact that if they can't make money off him, the people who have been making money, which is DC Comics and the giant conglomerates that own DC Comics, if they can't make money off of this character, then they're going to destroy it. And allow these progressive people to destroy it, because they don't want anybody else making money off it either. They want it destroyed. And that's really my take on the entire thing. And again, hopefully Batman gets spared this because of his influence on selling the comics and the movies as well. But yeah, they're going to continue this. It's going to be unabated until the time when he goes into the public domain, and hopefully people will then rescue the character and bring it back to former glory. Let's see. Marxism seems based on envy and deception. Envy only steals. The Marxism creeps into today's literature. Will it keep it from becoming classic? Yes. I think you're. I apologize for my mumbling over the comments, but yes, I think that Marxism is the thing that is creeping into almost everything that we see around us today, and into entertainment most specifically. It's being used as a propaganda tool. So yeah, there's nothing going to be classic because they're not actual stories. Again, I said this over and over again on my channel. They're propaganda. It's a way of teaching you that gets around your rational mind. That's the definition of propaganda. They can write out and say it in some of the videos that I cover and go over, and probably get back to, hopefully, some of them in the near future. But yeah, that's why they're not classic stories. They're not going to be classic stories because they're not stories at all. It's the same thing. And I hesitate to push it this far, but like the fact that you don't see any classic stories coming out of 1930s Germany. Why not? Because it was just propaganda. That's all. So yeah, we're not going to have anything to look back on, except for, let's hope, again, the things that are getting created right now by people who are independent and have some merit within what they're doing. So scrolling down, let's see, scrolling down. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, RJ, thanks for the confirmation. I have hope that all these terrible characters will fall by the wayside in time. I used to fear they would replace legacy characters. Now it's not so certain. Again, that's a good way of thinking about it, but it's the destruction of legacy characters that's all they care about. And again, like I'm trying to rescue these characters myself in my own way. I hate what they've done to Wolverine. I hate what they've done to Batman, even though Batman's, again, not too bad, but I hate what they've done to the characters. So I'll create a character that's a combination of both of them. Again, I don't want to get sued for copying characters, so I don't do anything very specific that's going to look exactly like those characters, but I'll incorporate them into my other characters so that I can bring the great points of those back to life. And hopefully, sometime in the future, who knows? I mean, I have a character, you're seeing them on screen there, which is Blue Skies. He is based off of Superman, but he's really not a good character. He's on the edge of being a villain, even though he thinks himself a hero. But again, if I can incorporate Superman ideas into that and take this character again that's corrupted, again, we're looking at a corrupted Superman right now. I know, SG, you'd know a lot about that because Professor Geek talks a lot about it, but I'm taking this character that looks like Superman, has sort of Superman like powers. He's been corrupted, and if people want to see that character be rejuvenated and brought into a heroic Superman form again, I'll do so, which is what I'm doing again with Kit Fox right now. So yeah, it is the rejuvenation of these characters through good storytelling that's going to save the legacy characters, because all you see around you right now is destruction. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Anyone? Oh, Dominic says, and I know this isn't for me, but has anyone recommended you? Oh, it is for me. Okay, I thought he was talking to the people in the chat. Anyone recommended to you any older manga, such as Astro Boy? Besides that, are there any philosophers, Western or Eastern, that you want to study in the future? I have so many philosophers that I'm trying to get through their entire body of work that I don't know if I'll get to it by the time I'm dead. So um, has anybody recommended to me older manga? Not that old, not Astro Boy. I'm not sure when Astro Boy stopped actually printing. I have read things that are fairly old. I don't know, like early 2000s. Let's see. Things like, oh, what the heck was the name of it? Um, oh, Guilty Crown. I have Guilty Crown is a good manga. It's not the greatest, but I mean it's fairly good. Go back to things like Scrapped Princess, I think was a manga at one point. Things like that. I really enjoy Scrapped Princess in the world building that it did, and its magic system, which wasn't magic at all when you actually get into it, and all these kinds of things. So yeah, it's more the 2000s. I always look at them and I think this must be from the 1990s or 1980s. No, they're from the 2000s. And that feel for manga and for anime went right up to about almost 2010. That you could probably place it in the 90s or sometimes even in the 80s. So yeah, there's things like that. Although I did read things in the 80s like and stuff like that. Um, Akira, of course, but it's all in the republished American version of these. So who knows whether or not they were actually accurate to the detail of the Japanese translations? I don't know. So again, I would probably read more manga, and I probably will read more manga. One of the stories that I just talked about that I want to do in the future is a story. One of the characters, the backup story for the Valiant Heroes is a short backup story about a girl and her. She becomes a character known as Artemis. This character is going to recur within Thomas Valiant #2. She's connected to Cardinal, who's the character in red. I'll probably I'll see if I can put this character up for a minute. So we'll take this off and show you a picture of Cardinal so that you know who I'm talking about. This character here. No, it's still playing the other one. But um, the character, she's in red and black. Anyways, so that character is going to be um, in Thomas Valiant #2 as well. And the character of Artemis, I'm going to I've written a story. I'm about halfway through writing a story. I haven't written the entire thing, but I think it will be presented in a manga format. And I'll probably be diving into more manga in order to prepare the script for it in a way that the artist, which is, I've already worked with manga artists, the backup story for Artemis, which is Detention, which is in the Valiant Heroes. I work with a manga studio to do the art for that. So again, probably be diving into more manga in order to, and great manga, in order to get the feel for the panel layout and all that kind of stuff. Let me see. I um, took off the Thomas Valiant stuff in order to give you a picture of Cardinal. So let's see if this works. No, it's only going in the background. So I don't think it's coming up for you. So I'm going to have to put the Thomas Valiant stuff back on. Hopefully you don't mind that. So if you go to the Valiant Heroes campaign, it is the character again. She's the character at the top with the poster that's there. Anyways, moving on. Let's see. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Oh, now I lost my place. Oh, darn. Good gracious. I'm way behind. I'm going to try to catch up. And then I've been going a little bit longer than I wanted to. It's getting kind of late, but I will see if I can get to um, everybody's questions here. See, I should be less long-winded um, in my answering. So Dominic says, oh yeah, that's the manga one. Okay, now I'm on track. Tony says, what do you think of Wonder Woman's creator? Yeah, I really don't like the origins of Wonder Woman. But again, I think some of these characters, to me anyways, certainly, again, when I grew up, DC was a joke. Really, Batman was good. You read some things like Green Arrow and Green Lantern, and it wasn't a joke so much. But a lot of the other like the Superman books and the Wonder Woman books, they were a joke. All right, for someone reading comics back then, that's all they were. And it was the revamping of DC after Crises on Infinite Earths that really built that character to be something of merit again. Wonder Woman, that is. And it was George Perez with his spectacular art, which is unparalleled in many regards. Yeah, he built that character visually, and they've gotten away from the fun loving character that he made her. She was a warrior when at the same time being fun loving. So, that's gone. But I think the earlier books I don't like the origin of Wonder Woman. I don't like the 60s thing where they took away her powers. I don't like the 70s thing where it was campy pieces of garbage. Honestly, it was, you would get, I remember a Superman. It was a comic about Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. And basically there was a genie that came out of an urn that got broken apart, and they had to put the urn, they couldn't put it back together to trap the genie again. And of course, it was more powerful than Superman because Superman can't deal with magic and all these kinds of things. And then they finally, I think it was Batman, put the urn back together, or Wonder Woman did, and they couldn't figure out how she did it. And they were asking her, how'd you do it? Are you so strong that you were able to press it together at the molecular level? And the tagline, or the punchline for the entire comic was, no, I use super glue. And everybody bursts out laughing in the comics like, oh my sweet heavens, it's just moronic. So yeah, Crisis saved that character. So let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Let's see. Thank you for answering my questions. Every time I see people discussing them, they have been shown to have great misunderstanding of Kant, Rand, and Nietzsche, or twist the facts to suit their needs. Yeah, well, again, I might not have Nietzsche. We had to study in university. I mean, people loved Nietzsche, like students. So you could not go through political philosophy or philosophy without reading almost every last thing Nietzsche did, which I had to do because there were so many Nietzsche classes. But at the same time, it's not something that I'm going to spend my entire life trying to figure out, because that was one of the things. I went into the Nietzsche classes and said to them, listen, I read these books that you told me to, and it makes no sense because he's contradicting himself here, here, and here. He's saying the exact opposite. And then they would look at me and go, the professors would look at me and go, yeah, that's what Nietzsche does. He's dynamic. It never stays the same. He can contradict himself from one page to another. And I'm thinking, well, that's just garbage. But anyway, let's see. Incubus, Time Lord is here. He says, Helen of Troy and Achilles and the Trojan War was all made up. Troy was a myth. Homer wrote the stories of the Trojan horse, the Odyssey, and the Iliad. Odyssey is fake. Well, yeah, I'd say the Odyssey is much more myth than the Iliad. But again, there is some historical archaeological evidence to basically point to the fact that Troy may have been a real place. So again, take what you want from that. So scrolling down, trying to get to more of these questions. Would you ever narrate the action of a novel in the present tense rather than the past tense? Yeah, actually, I don't remember. I don't recall when I did my novel. I don't know who you're talking to, Ben. If that question is for me, when I did the manuscript for my novel, I think it's in the present tense, because that's the only way I could actually get my story down really well, and my editors actually really helped me with that, making sure that it always stayed the same. Have you ever read any of Howard's boxing or detective stories? Um, no, I haven't actually. Although I think The God in the Bowl, again, which I talked about earlier, which I was misremembering, is a detective story. It makes zero sense within the Conan world, if you ask me. But at the same time, it's basically a detective story. So, and it wasn't really something I was very interested in. So, scrolling down, have you ever thought of doing a retrospective on the British invasion of comic books? Well, I talked to who was it? Connor Tomlinson about this a couple of weeks ago, and I really agree with him. I think the British invasion to some extent ruined um, uh, North American comics. Um, Unfortunately, um, the thing was that the real greatness, I think, of Marvel Comics came from the fact that all these people were New Yorkers or former New Yorkers or transplanted New Yorkers. And you really got an American feel there, especially from these hard knock guys. And I would say, quite honestly, you look at people like Graham Nolan and the other people that I've been interviewing, you look at John Romita Jr. Or who else? Mike Barron, things like that. They're people with a New York spirit, although wouldn't say current New York spirit, not that kind of, quote unquote, progressive New York spirit. Um, some of them maybe John Romita Jr., but not Graham Nolan or Mike Barron or people like that. But I think they're of that old guard where you had to be in that place in order to tell those stories, in order to work for these books. And it really shaped the Marvel to a great degree. That's why everything's based upon New York. But yeah, when the British invasion came in, I think that killed that uniqueness in a way. Maybe it needed to die, but at the same time, it didn't replace it with something that I think was overly wasn't better than what came before. Let's see, RJ, how did the idea of hero in ancient Greek stories stay so prevalent when the Greek gods like Zeus were so malicious? I would say the thing was about Greek culture. I'll try to get through this one with speed, because again, trying to get to all the questions. But I would say the thing is, because the Greek civilization that we know of um, was either the dying of that Mycenaean civilization or the rebirth that came after the Greek Dark Ages, which what we know of, Sparta and Athens and things like that. They're the I don't know what you'd call it, the ancestors of people who went through a dark ages after the fall of a great civilization. So they're always trying to understand this civilization that was about 800 years older than them, which did things that they couldn't even fathom. To them, they were gods. So while at the same time the myth gets corrupted by taking in so many of these other myths from around the world. That's why you have Zeus being so promiscuous and taking so many wives and doing so many nasty things. It's because, oh, we just absorbed these people. They have a story about their main god, which is, I don't know, sort of Zeus like. So we're going to take that and we're going to shove it into the idea of Zeus. And therefore, we're going to tell them, yeah, you're worshiping Zeus. That's all you're doing. And so they absorb those people in that way. That's where those. I really think the development of their myth is a development of their conquering and integrating with the societies around them, while at the same time they kept a Greek core, which was trying to understand what came before them, the great society that came before them, not the myth of magical kind of ideas. They were grounded in real ideas of how did they build these monuments, how did they think these things up, how did they write their language. And so again, it becomes very rational and very pattern based. And so there was a duality, I would say, in the way that they thought. Hopefully that answered your question. Let's see. Astro Boy was released in 1952, ended in 1968. Wow. I do remember watching Astro Boy, but yeah, I never read anything that far back for manga. Let's see. To recommend Astro Boy. Let's okay. I'll have to scroll down. John says, RJ, if you can, an interview with Dan Fraga. I probably will be doing interviews with some of the people in this space of crowdfunded comics and things like that after summer's over. I don't know if I'm going to be doing a whole lot more. I do have, I think, one or two lined up left, but that's about it. So, but yes, I would love to do Dan Fraga. Let's see. RJ's live streams were meant to be long-winded. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I think I'm getting down to everybody's taking off because they're getting a little bit tired. I'm sure they are. Tony has one more question. What are your thoughts on Alan Moore? I don't like Alan Moore. I really don't. I like the ideas that he has. I really don't like how he expresses them. So a couple last questions. Speaking of the British invasion, what are your thoughts on the works of Grant Morrison? Again, I'm Grant Morrison is not somebody I really followed when I was into comics heavily. Instead of picking and choosing, I would buy everything on the shelf. But yeah, I really didn't care for Grant Morrison, nor did I follow him as a creator that I wanted to know his name. There were so many others. Let's see. One last question. Can you be hired as a consultant to help develop stories? I really don't have time to do that. People are always asking me to do that. Because the thing is, I create a story from ground up. I don't, the reason I would love to do that for people. Let me put it this way. I would love to do that for people and to make money off it. That would be great. Maybe it's something I will do in the future. But right now, since I'm so, I don't know, overpowering in the way that I try to do everything, and people have told me this certainly plenty of times, I think I would eclipse the person's actual vision for their book and make it my own. And I really don't want to do that. I don't want to take someone's creation and write it over again for them so that it's my story. And I'm not enough of an editor in order to stop myself from doing that right now. So hopefully I will become so by working with others, especially artists. So, all right. John says he's not tired. Well, sorry, John. I think I'm going to have to go. And since everyone else is starting to trickle away, I'm going to cut this off. I was going to stop about 20 minutes ago. But anyways, the reason why I put up the stream again was to talk and answer questions about anything, but at the same time to promote CROM the Destroyer. I'm going to play the second trailer for that as an outro in a minute. Also, I'm going to be putting up a second chance Indiegogo campaign for Thomas Valiant, which is going to have the remains of the first printing. Those books are going, they do say printed in the small print on the back cover, first printing. So you will know you get a first printing, and they will be signed by me, like the first ones were from the first campaign. And everything that you could get in the first campaign, the 5 posters, plus the map, plus the 12 trading cards, which you could get as a pack, all of those will also be available. So if anyone, which some of those were not available with the Valiant Heroes. So again, I'm just cleaning up the things that I have. There's not going to be too many of them available, probably more than I'll be able to sell in a campaign. Again, I have somewhere between 200 and 250. The reason why I haven't put the thing up already is because I need to know the exact number so I can put it into Indiegogo and make sure that I don't sell more than I actually have. So anyways, so look for that. Thomas Valiant #1, first edition, second chance campaign coming. If I get my act together, it will be tomorrow that it's going up. Let's hope that works. And again, I have so many things in the works that I'm trying to get up, but I'm thinking that again, the having an open campaign and a live campaign, not one that's basically in demand, but a live one is what I want to try to do over and over again, and get the other things rolling that I've been meaning to do, like the art contest, and which has been delayed severely because a lot of people contacted me and said, hey, you can't do an art contest that way. So yeah, if I have an open campaign, it'll give me a little more incentive to fix all of that. So anyways, I'm going to take off. Hopefully everyone has a great night, and thank you for everyone who has shown up and contributed to this live stream. If you are on Twitter, you can find me at RJ of the Island. That is linked in my new videos now, because someone said it's also linked on my channel. But and I will be retweeting the second chance campaign stuff as soon as I get it up. So if you could retweet it on your channel, or sorry, on your feed, that'd be great. The more we get the word out there, the more books we can sell, the faster I can make books, the more I can do. This is one of the things I want to thank everybody for and encourage you to do, for not just me, but indie creators. The more that you can help them, the biggest problem of getting these books out there is having people know about them. I still have people all over the place that just are into indie comics and into the scene, that has some of the people I'm working with, and yet they have no idea who I am, no idea that I have a book out there, nothing like that at all. So getting the word out by retweeting, by putting things up in your social media is extremely helpful. I cannot stress that enough. It is, you might not think that it's something big when you, with your, I don't know, 20 followers or 100 followers, you retweet something for me or another, some other indie comic person, but it is immensely helpful. It is one of the things that helps the most. So I want to thank everyone for doing that, and hopefully you can do that in the future. That would be great. All right, I better stop rambling. Thank you again, everyone, for showing up, and I am going to be out of here as soon as I play this outro of the CROM the Destroyer second trailer. Just let me see if I can get it going here. All right, I'll see y'all later. Enjoy CROM the Destroyer.
An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor. No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed,